The Tactical Topography of Stalking Victimization and Management by
Michael Rivera,
Liz Avila,
and Jackson Jennings. Summary. Stalking is defined as the pattern of behavior with an intent to cause fear or suffering. In this case study, all of the previous reports and studies of stalking was compiled. This included 108 samples and 103 specific studies. Stalking can be of any nature that follows a singular person or persons with the attempt to cause sexual harm, physical harm, and/or psychological harm. There is no hypothesis because the researcher is focused on the accumulation of data rather than finding correlation.
Literature review. Stalking wasn't an official crime until 1990 when California legislation took the first step. Since stalking was recently criminalized, not much is known in the social scientific community on this topic until these past few years. There was a handful of studies by the mid-90s, but at the time of this review, over 100. Authors made a note to make sure to chart and date information as it comes in due to a growing field. It is said it will be accomplished through defining and identifying stalking and related phenomenon. Stalking is being defined as being pursued or harassed in an intentional, unwanted, ongoing, and fear-inducing manner. It is normally associated with a level of fear of the unwanted pursuit. The difference between stalking and someone just annoyingly persisting romantic affairs with someone makes it genuinely difficult on defining what stalking genuinely is. Because yes, it is being harassed by someone intentionally trying to pursue another, but there's a line that they can cross before it actually becomes stalking.
Data and methods. This was a meta-analysis of 108 samples across 103 studies with over 70,000 participants. It revealed that there was an average prevalence of 23% for women and 10.5% for men, and the average duration of stalking occurred for 2 years. 77% of stalkers were from a prior acquaintance, and 49% of those were originating from past romantic relationships. 42 of the studies showed that the average physical violence incidence was 33%, and 17 of those that examined the prevalence of sexual violence showed that an incidence was slightly greater than 10%. There were also 32 studies that examined restraining orders and showed that they were violated about 40% of the time, and the events occurring after the violation of that restraining order were worse events, almost 21% of the time.
Results and conclusion. There is increased empirical attention on the subject of stalking due to the prevalence in the media and/or other social platforms. However, there is no evidence to support that the actual event of stalking is increasing. There are 4 times as many women's cases, and research has proven that men's cases are substantially lower. The average duration of a stalker interest is around 2 years. The victimization ratio from men to women is 2.5. 20% of all people will experience stalking or become a stalker in their lifetimes. 75% of stalking is because of a prior relationship. Stalking behavior appears to take one of 7 basic forms: hyper-intimacy, proximity surveillance, invasion, proxy, intimidation and harassment, coercion and constraint, and aggression. These have any several possible effects on victims, including health, cognitive health, physical health, social health, or resilience health. Victims can try to cope with their predicament through moving away, moving with, moving against, or moving inward, which the victim seeks self-control or self-actualization, or moving outward, in which the victim seeks the assistance of others. Law enforcement regards stalking as a very minor crime. the most that somebody can do is getting restraining order, which is often violated and ignored. This can as well make the actual event of stalking worse for the victim.
An improvement that could be done would be to include research of stalking from before the 1990s when it was made a crime. You could also include dates of studies that were included in the analysis so that you could compare whether or not the rates of stalking increased or decreased as time goes on.
An improvement could always be a larger sample. They had very specific categories and broader ones, but they might want to create more categories and variables. How do they define the stories told through the surveys? What is the key factor separating stalking from a nuisance? The validity can always be questioned because no one will actually know if someone's exaggerating or underestimating the severity of their own stories.
Another improvement could be personal interviews, where the interviewee talks to the people that have experienced stalking and therefore is able to compile a bigger data set and more information on statistics and the prevalence within certain demographic regions. There can also be more research on the effect of restraining orders and if this is actually a help or just gets people into more trouble.